The Grandview Mall on Christmas Eve was less a place of joy and more a battlefield of procrastination. The air was thick with the scent of cinnamon pretzels and desperate perfume, while the noise was a physical wall of sound, screaming children, blaring pop carols, and the relentless beep of registers. For Lucas Miller, the noise was just another heavy thing to carry, like the tool belt digging into his hips. At 32, Lucas felt older than his years. His knuckles were permanently stained with grease and would stain, and he walked with the slight subconscious stoop of a man who spent his life apologizing for taking up space. He was the mall's lead maintenance technician, which meant he was the invisible ghost who fixed the toilets, unclogged the fountains, and kept the heat running so the wealthy could shop in comfort. Daddy, look. The bear. It's waving. Lucas looked down. His 6-year-old daughter, Lily, was pressing her face against the glass of the toy store display. She was wearing her favorite pink puffer coat, a thrift store find that Lucas had carefully patched with a darker pink thread so the tear wouldn't show. I see him, Buck, Lucas said, his voice raspy. He checked his watch. His shift had technically ended 40 minutes ago, but the mall manager, Mr. Henderson, had caught him at the time clock. A heater in the north wing was rattling. Henderson had offered double time pay. Lucas did the math instantly. Double time meant an extra $60. $60 meant he could buy the ingredients for a real Christmas dinner instead of frozen pizza. It meant he might, just might, be able to afford the Lego castle set Lily had been eyeing for 3 months. Daddy has to fix one more machine, okay? Lucas knelt down, brushing a stray hair from Lily's forehead. You sit right here on the bench. You have your coloring book. Lily nodded solemnly, pulling a tattered book from her small backpack. I'm drawing a dragon. Good girl. Do not move. I'll be back in 20 minutes. Lucas stood up, his knees cracking. He hated leaving her, even for a second. Since his wife Sarah had passed away 5 years ago, Lucas carried a constant, low-level hum of anxiety. He was all Lily had. If he failed, there was no safety net. There were no grandparents, no savings, just him and his toolbox against the world. He jogged toward the service corridor, his heavy boots thudding against the polished marble. He was invisible to the shoppers rushing past him in their cashmere coats and silk scarves. They looked through him, not at him. He was just the help. 2 floors above, in the chaotic sprawl of the food court, Elena Vance sat alone at a small round table near the railing. To anyone passing by, Elena looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. She wore a cream-colored wool coat that cost more than Lucas's truck, and her dark hair fell in perfect, glossy waves. But if you looked closer, you would see the tension in her jaw and the way her hands gripped her charcoal pencil until her knuckles turned white. Elena was 25, and she was trapped in a glass cage of silence. She had lost her hearing at 14 due to a severe infection. In the decades since, she had learned to navigate the world with her eyes, reading lips and body language with the precision of a detective. But today, the visual noise of the mall was overwhelming. Her phone, sitting face up on the table, lit up with another notification. Mother, you are being dramatic. Come back to the hotel. Richard is waiting. Elena stared at the screen, a bitter taste rising in her throat. She had walked out of her father's charity gala an hour ago. She couldn't take it anymore, the way Richard, her fiancé, placed his hand on the small of her back to steer her like a shopping cart, the way her father apologized for her condition to his business partners, the way her mother refused to learn sign language because she thought it was unsightly. Mother, he controls the merger, Elena. Stop acting like a child. You have a duty. Elena flipped the phone over. She opened her sketchbook. This was her sanctuary. When she drew, she didn't need to hear. She didn't need to speak with a voice she was self-conscious about. She began to sketch the scene below her. The frenetic energy of the crowd. The desperation of the holiday. She drew the people as blurs of motion, faceless and hurried. She was so lost in the friction of the charcoal against the paper that she didn't notice the little girl in the pink coat standing 2 feet away, watching her. Lucas wiped the sweat from his forehead. The heater was fixed. It was a temporary patch, but it would hold through the holiday. He pocketed the cash Henderson had handed him and grabbed the slightly damaged box of Legos the manager had thrown in as a bonus. Victory. He had the dinner money. He had the castle. He hurried back to the bench outside the toy store. It was empty. The world tilted on its axis. The noise of the mall, which he had successfully tuned out, came rushing back in a deafening roar. Lily. He spun in a circle. Lily. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced his chest. He scanned the crowd. He saw a sea of strangers. He didn't see the pink coat. He ran. He checked the toy store. Nothing. He checked the fountain. Nothing. He shoved past a man in a tailored suit who shouted an insult at him, but Lucas didn't hear it. He was a father in the grip of his worst nightmare. Then he looked up. On the upper level, leaning against the glass railing of the food court, was a splash of pink. Lucas didn't wait for the escalator. He took the stairs 3 at a time, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He reached the top floor, gasping for air, and sprinted toward the railing. There she was. Lily was standing perfectly still, her chin resting on the table of a woman in a cream coat. Lucas slowed down as he approached, his legs shaking from the adrenaline dump. He stepped up behind Lily, ready to snatch her up, but then he saw what she was doing. Lily was mesmerized. She was watching the woman draw. Lily, Lucas breathed out, his voice trembling. Lily turned, her face beaming. Daddy, look, the lady is drawing magic. Lucas looked at the woman. She didn't react. She didn't turn around. She didn't flinch at his voice. She just kept shading the corner of the page. Lucas realized instantly. She didn't hear me. He stepped around the table so he was in her line of sight. He reached out and tapped the table gently with his knuckle. Elena jumped, her head snapping up. Her eyes went wide. She saw a large man in dirty work clothes looming over her, breathing hard. Her first instinct was fear, the instinctive fear of a woman alone. But then she saw his eyes. They weren't angry. They were terrified and exhausted. And she saw the little girl clinging to his leg. Lucas saw the sleek hearing aids tucked behind her ears. He saw the way her eyes locked onto his face, waiting for visual cues. He took a deep breath to steady his hands. He set the Lego box on the floor. He stood up straight, squared his shoulders, and raised his hands. Are you okay? His hands moved, the gestures crisp and familiar. Elena froze. The pencil slipped from her fingers. She stared at his hands, rough, scarred, stained with grease, forming the shapes of her language perfectly. You sign? She signed back, her movements tentative. Lucas smiled. It was a small, crooked smile that transformed his tired face. My wife was deaf, he signed. I haven't done it in a few years. I'm a little rusty. It was the first time in 10 years a stranger had bridged the gap without being asked. Elena felt a sudden, stinging pressure behind her eyes. Your daughter is cute, she signed, nodding toward Lily. She ran off. Scared me to death, Lucas replied, his hands moving with the natural cadence of a man who had once spoken this language with love. I'm Lucas. This is Lily. I'm Elena. Lily tugged on Lucas's pants. Daddy, tell her the picture is pretty. Lucas looked at the sketch. It was dark, moody, and brilliant. Lily says your drawing is magic. Elena looked at the little girl. The fear in her chest began to loosen. She reached into her bag, pulled out a fine-tip marker, and quickly drew a tiny, whimsical unicorn on the corner of the paper. She tore the corner off and handed it to Lily. Lily gasped, clutching the paper like it was a winning lottery ticket. Thank you. Lucas watched the exchange. He was good at reading people. It was a survival skill. He saw the expensive clothes, the untouched phone, and the profound loneliness radiating off this woman. Are you waiting for someone? Lucas asked gently. Elena looked at her phone. The screen buzzed again. She didn't look at the text, but she knew what it said. Come back. Don't embarrass us. No, she signed. My family, they aren't coming. Do you have a ride? Elena shook her head. She had arrived in the family limousine. She had no car, no cash, and her father had likely already frozen her credit cards as a punishment for leaving. I have nowhere to go, she admitted. Her hands felt heavy as she made the signs. It's complicated. Just then, the mall lights flickered and dimmed. The emergency strobes pulsed red. An announcement boomed over the intercom, audible only to Lucas and the other hearing shoppers. Attention shoppers. Due to the severe blizzard conditions and power grid instability, the mall is closing immediately. Please evacuate calmly. Lucas looked at the skylights. The glass was buried under a thick blanket of white. The storm had arrived. We have to go, Lucas said aloud, then immediately switched to his hands. The mall is closing. Snowstorm. They are kicking everyone out. He looked at Elena. She looked small in her expensive coat. He thought of Sarah. He thought of how cold the world was when you were alone on Christmas Eve. He looked at his truck keys. If you have nowhere to go, you can come with us, Lucas signed. The offer hung in the air, bold and possibly foolish. It's not much. My house is small, but it's warm. And we have pancakes. Elena looked at him. She saw the grease on his shirt. She saw the kindness in his eyes. She saw the safety in the way his daughter held his hand. She looked back at her phone, at the life of cold expectations she was running from. She reached out and turned her phone off. Okay, she signed. The drive was treacherous. Lucas's truck, a battered Ford with a heater that rattled like a dying lung, crawled through the whiteout. Inside the cab, however, it was an intimate sanctuary. The air smelled of pine air freshener and old leather. Lily was strapped into her booster seat in the back, clutching her Lego box, babbling happily about Santa Claus. Lucas drove with intense focus, his knuckles white on a wheel. Elena sat in the passenger seat, watching him. She noticed the way he checked the rearview mirror every few seconds to make sure Lily was okay. She noticed his hands, working hands, capable hands. They were nothing like Richard's soft, manicured fingers. They pulled up to a small cottage on the edge of town. It was a working-class neighborhood, the kind of place Elena's father would sneer at. The house was small, with peeling white paint, but the walkway was shoveled, and a warm yellow light glowed from the porch. "Run inside, Bug," Lucas said as he unlocked the door. They stepped inside, and Elena stopped. She had grown up in a mansion that felt like a museum. Cold marble floors, furniture you weren't allowed to touch, and silence that felt like judgment. Lucas's home was alive. The living room was tiny. The furniture was mismatched, a plaid sofa that had seen better days, a coffee table covered in crayon marks. But the walls were filled with framed drawings, clearly Lily's, and photos of a beautiful, smiling woman who looked a bit like Elena. A real fire crackled in the wood stove. The room smelled of wood smoke and cinnamon. It was the poorest house she had ever entered. It was the most beautiful place she had ever seen. "Welcome to the castle," Lucas signed, a shy smile touching his lips. "I'll get you some dry clothes. You look frozen." He disappeared into a bedroom and returned with a pair of soft gray sweatpants and a flannel shirt. "These were my wife's," he explained, his hands moving slower now. "She was tall like you. I hope you don't mind." Elena took them, her fingers brushing his. The flannel was soft and worn. "Thank you." While Elena changed in the small, spotless bathroom, Lucas went into dad mode. He stoked the fire. He put a kettle on for tea. He set up the Lego box on the rug. When Elena emerged, she was drowning in the oversized shirt, her sleeves rolled up. She had washed off her gala makeup. She looked younger, softer. "Daddy, can we build a castle now?" Lily asked, dumping the plastic bricks onto the rug. Lucas looked at Elena. "Do you mind? It's our tradition." "I'd love to help," Elena signed. For the next 3 hours, the class divide evaporated. Sitting cross-legged on the worn rug, the heiress and the handyman built a fortress. Lucas was incredible with the pieces. He didn't just snap them together. He showed Lily how the arches supported the weight, how the foundation had to be strong. "You're good at this," Elena signed, watching him construct a tower. Lucas shrugged. "I used to be a cabinet maker. I built custom furniture. Before." "Before what?" "Before life got expensive," he answered simply. There was no self-pity in the sign, just a fact. "Medical bills. Sarah was sick for a long time. I needed steady insurance, so I took the maintenance job." At 9 o'clock, Lily fell asleep on the rug, curled up like a cat. Lucas scooped her up effortlessly and carried her to her room. When he returned, the house was quiet. He went to the kitchen and came back with 2 glasses of cheap wine. He handed one to Elena and sat in the armchair opposite her. "Merry Christmas, Elena." Elena took a sip. "Why did you help me?" she asked suddenly. "You don't know me. I'm a stranger." Lucas leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath hitch. "Because I know what it looks like when family makes you feel alone," he sighed. "Sarah's parents, they didn't like me. They thought I wasn't good enough. Blue-collar trash. When she got sick, they blamed me. They made her cry on Christmas Eve 5 years ago. I promised myself I'd never let anyone feel that way if I could help it. Elena stared at him. The vulnerability in his admission shattered her last defense. Tears spilled over her cheeks. Lucas didn't look away. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He simply sat with her, his presence a steady anchor in the storm. My family disowned me today, Elena confessed, her hand shaking. Because I wouldn't marry the man they chose. Because I wanted to be an artist. Because I'm deaf, and they wanted me to be normal. Lucas's jaw tightened. A flash of anger crossed his face, not at her, but for her. Normal is overrated, Lucas signed firmly. And for the record, your drawing is incredible. You have a gift. Elena looked at him. In the firelight, the weary mechanic looked like a king. Christmas morning broke with a blinding white brilliance. The storm had passed, leaving the world buried in 2 feet of pristine snow. Elena woke up on the sofa. Someone, Lucas, had covered her with a heavy quilt during the night. She sat up, disoriented for a moment, until the smell of bacon hit her. She walked into the kitchen. It was a tiny space, but Elena noticed the details now. The cabinets were cherry wood, hand-carved with exquisite detail. The table was solid oak, perfectly joined. Lucas had built these. Lucas was at the stove, flipping pancakes. Lily was sitting at the table, wearing pajamas with reindeer on them. Good morning. Lily sighed. The gesture was sloppy, but unmistakable. Elena's jaw dropped. She looked at Lucas. Lucas turned, holding a spatula. She watched a YouTube video while you were sleeping, he signed, grinning. She wanted to talk to you. Elena felt a lump in her throat. Her own mother hadn't learned good morning in 15 years. This 6-year-old had learned it in 1 hour. They ate breakfast together, a chaotic, happy meal of syrup and laughter. For the first time in her life, Elena felt the warmth of a home that didn't demand perfection. Then a heavy pounding on the front door shattered the peace. Elena froze. She knew that knock. It was the knock of entitlement. Lucas stood up, his demeanor shifting instantly from playful dad to protector. Stay here, he signed. He walked to the door and opened it. Standing on the porch, shivering in expensive wool coats, were 2 men. Arthur Vance, her father, and Richard, her fiancé. Where is she? Arthur demanded, not bothering to look Lucas in the eye. He tried to push past him. Lucas didn't budge. He was a solid wall of muscle. He blocked the doorway with his forearm. Who are you looking for? Lucas asked, his voice low and dangerous. My daughter, Arthur spat. Her phone GPS tracked here. Step aside, you, whatever you are. Elena stepped into the hallway. She saw them. She felt the old panic rising, the conditioning to obey. Arthur saw her. Elena, get your coat. This is ridiculous. Sleeping in a hovel? With a janitor. He spoke the words, assuming she would lip read. He didn't sign. He never signed. Richard sneered, looking around the modest living room. Come on, all. You've had your little rebellion. Let's go home. Elena looked at them. Then she looked at Lucas. Lucas wasn't looking at her with judgment. He was looking at her father with a look of pure, protective fury. She's not going anywhere she doesn't want to go, Lucas said firmly. Excuse me? Arthur laughed, a cold, sharp sound. Do you know who I am? I could buy this entire block and bulldoze it for a parking lot. You are kidnapping a vulnerable, disabled woman. She's not disabled, Lucas said, his voice rising. She's deaf, and she's not a child. She's a guest. Arthur stepped forward, poking Lucas in the chest with a gloved finger. Listen to me. She is a Vance. She belongs in a palace, not this dump. What can you offer her? Poverty? Struggle? Look at you. It was the weapon Arthur always used. Shame, class, money. Lucas flinched internally. He knew it was true. He had $40 in his wallet. He had a dented truck. He had nothing to give a woman like Elena. But then Elena stepped forward. She didn't look at her father's lips. She didn't try to speak with her voice. She stood next to Lucas. She took his rough, calloused hand in hers. She looked her father in the eye and signed, her movements aggressive and sharp. He offers me respect. He learned my language in 5 minutes. You haven't learned it in 15 years. She pulled out her phone, typed a message into her text-to-speech app, and held it up. The mechanical voice cut through the cold air. I'm not coming home. And for your information, I don't need your money. My hobby is, I have 3 contracts with publishing houses under my pseudonym. I have more in my savings account than you think. I am staying here. Arthur turned purple. You chose him over us. Elena looked at Lucas. She saw the man who fixed broken things. She saw the man who built a castle out of plastic bricks so his daughter could dream. She saw the man who made her feel heard. Yes, she sighed. I choose him. Get off my porch, Lucas said. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. He stepped forward, towering over Arthur. Now, Arthur and Richard looked at Lucas's size, then at the neighbors starting to come out onto their porches to watch. They retreated, muttering threats, slipping on the icy walkway as they fled back to their limo. Lucas slammed the door. The sound vibrated through the floorboards, sealing the cold out. Silence returned to the hallway. Lucas stared at the door, his chest heaving. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a sudden, crushing insecurity. He turned to Elena. Is that true? He sighed slowly. You're independent. You have money. Elena nodded. Lucas pulled his hand away gently. He looked down at his worn boots. Elena, look around, he sighed, his movements small. I fix toilets at a mall. I have a 6-year-old. I have debt. I can't be what you need. Your father was right. I have nothing. Elena walked over to the kitchen cabinets, the beautiful cherrywood cabinets Lucas had built with his own hands. She ran her hand over the smooth finish, feeling the love and the craftsmanship. Did you build these? She asked. Lucas nodded. Years ago. Elena grabbed her sketchbook from the table. She flipped to a new page. She sketched rapidly for 30 seconds, her charcoal flying, then turned the book to him. It was a sketch of a storefront. High ceilings, large windows, exquisitely crafted wooden tables and chairs filling the space. The sign above the door read Miller Vance Design. You don't have nothing, she sighed, her eyes fierce. You have talent. You have heart. You have a daughter who knows she is loved. That is everything I never had. She stepped closer, invading his personal space, forcing him to look at her. I have the money to start a business, she sighed. I need a partner who can build. I need a home that feels like this one. I don't want a prince, Lucas. I want a partner. Lucas looked at her. He saw the truth in her eyes. She wasn't pitying him. She was betting on him. Daddy, is the bad man gone? Lily called from the kitchen, holding a piece of bacon. Lucas looked at Lily. Then he looked at Elena. For the first time in 5 years, Lucas allowed himself to want something for himself. I'm messy, he sighed. And I work late. Elena smiled. I'm deaf. And I leave sketchbooks everywhere. Lucas smiled. He reached out and took her hand again. This time, he didn't let go. Okay, he sighed. Okay. 1 year later, the shop on Main Street was bustling. The smell of fresh sawdust and rich coffee filled the air. The sign out front, hand-carved from solid oak, Red Miller Woodworks. Inside, Lucas was applying the final coat of varnish to a custom dining table. He was wearing a clean flannel shirt, his beard trimmed. He looked healthier. The stoop in his shoulders was gone. In the corner, by the large bay window, Elena sat at a drafting table, designing the next line of furniture. She looked up and caught his eye. She smiled, touching her hand to her heart. Lily, now 7, was sitting on a pile of lumber scraps near the front counter, teaching a group of customers basic sign language. This is how you say tree, she chirped, waving her hands in the air. Lucas looked around his shop. It wasn't a palace. It was work. It was sawdust and invoices and late nights. But it was theirs. He put down his brush and walked over to Elena. He tapped the table. Ready to go home? He sighed. Elena looked at him. Yes. He kissed her forehead, grabbed his coat, and scooped Lily up in one arm. As they walked out into the crisp winter air, the snow began to fall again. But this time nobody was cold.